Value proposition is always a hot topic discussed around the watch community. However, what is considered good value to one may not be for another. We all have different circumstances, backgrounds and disposable income. Seiko is more often than not mentioned in these discussions, and there's no denying they're a gateway for many into the hobby. In today's market, Seiko have been using this almost cult following and producing reissues and inspired pieces of many popular vintage models that are now out of reach for many. One that recently caught my eye, and many others it seems, is the new Prospex SPB14X series, and more specifically the SPB143 or SPDC101 in the Japanese market. Man, that's a lot of numbers. While not a reissue as such, but part of the brand's 55th anniversary celebrations, these new models were inspired by the brand's first dive watch, the 62 Mass. If you want a direct reissue, take a look at the 2017 SLA017, also a lot more expensive. The new SPB146 models used the 62 Mass as an inspiration to offer a more affordable, modern-looking sports dive watch with a toolish good look and a sprinkling of vintage DNA. It's still not the cheapest Seiko diver sports watch going around, so let's see if it lives up to all of the hype. Straight up, the 60s styled case shape is the first thing that draws you in with the almost squared off lug ends. The super hardened aka Diashield stainless steel beauty measures in at 40.5mm across with a lug to lug of 47.6mm. Combined with a thickness of 13.2mm and a lug width of 20mm, the Mini Mass, that's my new name for it, absolutely nails the proportions for a lot of wrist sizes. While most of the surfaces are brushed, there is elegant polished chamfered edges along the top and bottom of the case, which not only give it separation and depth, but a touch of class as well. Along with this, the lugs angle downwards significantly, only adding to the ease of wear across the wrist. Drilled lugs continue the tool watch form, but also aid in function, as this watch looks good on almost anything. On the side of the case we have the guardless crown, and it's personally one of my favourite looks on a neo-vintage watch, and Seiko nailed it with this one. There is plenty of grip on the large but not evasive crown, and winding of the 6R35 movement is easy and quite smooth. In the first position we have a date changing function, while in the second position we have hacking and time changing. Water resistance is a hefty 200 meters, so there's no fear of swimming with this piece. There's two options for the SPB146X, that being bracelet or rubber. From my understanding, the SPB143 is only offered on bracelet, which is fine by me. The bracelet is of a solid steel construction with Seiko's usual pin and collar sizing system. The links are all brushed except along the outer edges, which ties in nicely with the polishing on the case, and tapers from 20mm to 18mm, then flares back out again to 20mm at the clasp. The links have good articulation, have solid end links, and is kept safely on the wrist via a 3-way fold clasp with secure lock and release via push button with a simple logo on the milled buckle. There's also a small diver extension within the clasp and sufficient micro adjustments to allow good fitment. The biggest letdown is that I did find some small movement in the lug ends of the bracelet between the case, but this didn't affect wearability for me thus far. Having said that, the SPB looks amazing on almost any strap thrown at it. The squared off lugs ends just swallow NATO's sailcloth or leather. It literally hits all the marks for a versatile sports watch. On the outer section we find a 120 click unidirectional bezel. The action is smooth, yet has enough tension to feel solid. There is a very small amount of backplay on my piece, but nothing that takes away from its use. Grip is reasonable on the fine groove bezel edging, although is a little more difficult when wet. At bath time, with my kids. Bezel insert is a little different, being a black coloured Diashield coated stainless steel number rather than the usual aluminium types we see on other Seiko models. The number scaled is engraved the entire way around, and I love the look of the slightly faded black bezel against the grey dial. There's a loom pip at the 0 position as expected for a diver, and I'm sure you're asking, yes, the bezel lines up. Almost. It's ever so slightly off, but seeing there's no outer chapter ring, it's not noticeable in person, and with some slight back pressure, it all lines up pretty neatly anyway. This, along with the bracelet lug fitment, is a little disappointing given the dollars, and really is something Seiko always seems to battle with regarding QC, and yet to rectify. Other than those small niggling issues, the overall fitment of the SPB143 is just perfect on my 6 5/8 inch wrist. Yeah, I did some math, just can't say it properly. I find myself grabbing it 9 times out of 10 from the watch box for everyday wear, and that's after a few months of ownership now. It works for most situations except for probably formal, and you could most certainly get away with it while rocking a suit in the office. On the reverse side, there's a polished case back with the now famous Seiko wave engraving inside. Powering it all is the Seiko 6R35 movement, which now has a massive 70 hours of power reserve, along with hacking and hand winding. Accuracy is listed as -15 to +25 seconds per day, and on my time grapher at home I've steadily been seeing +8 seconds a day. You can be pretty confident this one will last for a long time, that's for sure. Up front we have a curved sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on the inner surface, and my favourite thing is that grey sunburst dial that constantly changes from almost a faded grey to almost black. 50 shades of grey, you might say. The polished applied markers in a baton shape pop off the dial as light bounces around, while the large, simple stick-like hands are half polished, half brushed, and look fantastic with the usual ease of reading. The seconds hand has a small square balance on the outer portion and matches the mark as well. I find the date window useful and well executed here and appropriate for the overall design. A simple minutes track on the outer portion of the dial finishes off the simple but effective design cues, yet somehow looks modern and vintage at the same time. There are some small imperfections under macro with some particles noted on the hour hand, and finishing of the dial around some of the markers was a little rough, however these are not noticeable under normal viewing. In low light, Seiko as usual has you covered with some of the best Luma Bright going around. While some may choke at the asking price of the SPB14X series, you have to ask yourself the usual question: will it fit my lifestyle, and am I happy to pay for that privilege? While the SPB143 may look a little boring, don't let that fool you. It's a very capable, elegant tool sports watch with enough vintage cues to keep you interested and keep you wanting more. And for me, that's all I can ask for. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And if you want to see more daily content, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Mr. Ace K Productions. See you next time.